feel like I was warned and yet I was not prepared. You know what I mean? If you're even mildly on Book Talk, you have seen this everywhere. This is technically the 5th book in the Court of Thorns and Roses series, but also this is supposed to be the first one of like a spinoff. This is basically Nesta Cassian section of the ACOTAR like love stories. I feel like the ACOTAR series is really, for a lot of people, it's ushered us away from like young adult to adult. Like I'd read adult books before and like a lot of them were standalone. So like this was probably my first venturing into like an adult series. I did read Outlander, but we did not make it past the first book. And I feel like I see a lot of young adult authors doing that now, where they're kind of branching out into the adult universe where we can handle more mature themes and stuff like that. I don't know if I prefer it. I feel like young adult tends to be a little more fun to me, but that's a tangent for another day. We're getting really off track. This follows Nesta post the war with Hybern that I think is gonna some things are not resolved yet, so I think that's what we're getting later. But this follows Nesta from a state of just like post-war shock and depression and just not being able to cope with being a fae. Like Nesta's in a dark place, and we saw that a smidge at the very end of Acowar, but like really we saw it in the Christmas special, and now like here we're like, wow, she's not okay. It's kind of her journey of trying to fight her way out of that, even when she doesn't always want to. I think Nesta as a character is very different from the normal main characters we get, especially in these types of stories. Like usually they have some sort of driving force. Our main characters usually have like a goal or a purpose, or they need to find themselves and they know that, whereas Nesta really doesn't want to go on that journey. She's gotten to such a low that she's okay with never finding herself again. Her being forced to do that was really interesting. Also, like, everyone loves Cassian so much, so like seeing him more, getting to know his character a little bit better, and getting to see his like insecurities and like how he grows as a person even though he's like 500 years old or something like that. It's really nice. I know this series gets a lot of hate, and I'm not gonna say it's the like literary top tier, but like for me, I love Sarah J. Maas's writing style, and I think her stories are they're very captivating, and they hit just the right way for me that like I can't put them down. So I also probably can't say much more without spoiling it. We really just need to get into it. See, even USA Today says it's a true page turner. Anywho, goodbye to the people who have not read it. It's worth the read, if only to get to the next book, which, I mean, I think everybody's basically confirmed that it's gotta be Asriel's. So, and if you think the internet loves Cassian, oh my gosh, do we love Asriel. Goodbye to the people who should not be spoiled. See you later. Okay, so we get this sort of like a flashback of when Nesta's in the cauldron. Now we know that Nesta has taken something from the cauldron. We're not really sure what it is, like just like kind of like a piece of its power. And so we get that moment where she is just so enraged when she goes into that cauldron. I mean, that's a great moment when she like points at Hybern and it's like a death promise. And then she goes and she takes this power out of the cauldron. And like we find out it's like this weird death power that turns her eyes silver, sort of like the way Amren's eyes used to glow silver. So now Nesta's got all this power that she doesn't know how to deal with. And I didn't quite know that going in. And it was really interesting to see like how Nesta just acting out, like drinking, going out every single night, like not caring about anyone else, like being so mean to her family, like being mean to everybody. It was her only way that she could find to cope with what had happened to like her family, to her dad specifically when he had died, and then also to just like her soul having to deal with the war. Like I eventually did feel very bad for her because in the Christmas special, she was so mean to Farah that I was like, I can't believe I'm gonna have to read a whole book about this. Like, I cannot even fathom dealing with this character for 750 pages. Because other people had said it was so good, I knew Sarah could bring it around, but I didn't want to hang out with Nesta. And seeing into her head and realizing that that was her way of trying to escape her thoughts, I felt more sympathy towards her. But while she's dealing with this, Cassian is getting the bad news that he's gonna have to be do you say it courtier? Courtier? Rhysand wants Cassian to have bigger responsibilities, and that includes dealing more in the political side as opposed to just being a general, being a, you know, warrior trainer type of person. And Cassian doesn't like that idea, and I wouldn't like it either. And on top of having to, like, work into the political sphere, he also is getting put in charge of Nesta, like a project. Because Farrah and Rhys have decided it's enough, they're gonna stop bankrolling Nesta's habits of going out all the time, being drunk all the time, and so they're cutting her off basically, and she can either train with Cassian or she goes back to the human world where there's literally nothing for her and everyone would hate her because she's Fae. So obviously she kind of has to go through this training regime, and she's going to be at the House of Wind just basically with Cassian. Asriel's gonna pop in and out, and they're gonna train. Also, Nesta's supposed to work in the library, and we didn't see, what's his name? Briaxis at all this whole book. I want to see Cassian reface down this giant monster that he's afraid of, but like then Nesta handle it. I think it's funny. Anyways, there's like kind of a lot of back and forth about like Mor going to visit Lucian and Jurian, and like honestly, I just didn't really get into that part of it in this book. I know it's probably like, I feel like for this story in particular, that had to be going on in the background because we had to be moving forward in this like political side of the story. I didn't care about that side for this book. I really was interested in like the training, the librarians, that type of side of it. But like I know we had to do that in the background. Also, there's like all this, I don't know if I missed it, about like Mor seems to have this secret. I don't know if it's like we already know like her secret that like she's more into women than men, and how she was never able to really like date on her own terms because she was like sworn to that guy from the Autumn Court, Eris. I don't know if that's like the weird break we're feeling here with her character, or maybe she's just, you know, gone to the background for right now and we're gonna see more later. It just felt like Mor was there, but not really a huge part of this. Had to print out my notes this time. Anyway, let's move forward. That was a side ramble. Oh my god. Okay, so the house reads romance novels, which I thought was so funny. So like, apparently, we find out at the very end, this is not going to go in chronological order, that Nesta made the house because she has the power of like almost a god in their universe. So like she wished for a friend, and so the house became her friend, which is so weird. But it was so fun to watch her talk to the house, and the house like weirdly take care of her and then sometimes like not give her wine. So it's like it was almost the friend she needed, not the one she wanted, for like a while. But the fact that like Nesta loves just like smutty romance novels, and the house gives her some to read. Like, it's so fun. The house has its favorite books and shares it with her. I put LOL Nesta imagining the threesome when she was with Cassian and Asriel and they were fighting, and she was, I can't put my elbow there, when she was watching them fighting and she's like imagining, no. I was like, we cannot be going there. I was like, there's no way that the TikToks are true. If you've seen, what's her name? I want to say it's like Maven Books on TikTok, where like Cassian constantly hits on Asriel. I couldn't handle it. I was like, there's no way we're going this way. Because the problem is, I didn't see Asriel with anyone because Elaine is technically mates with Lucian, even though she hates him. And like we've gotten like notes before from Sarah where she was like, mates don't have to be together. Like they can choose to not like get married, be in a relationship like that. Which I thought might be happening with Asriel, but I don't know. Because then maybe Asriel and Gwyn, which I've seen, you know, Gwynreal, hashtag Goodreads on the internet, but like I don't know about that either. And then I've seen all these TikToks about everyone in the inner circle hitting on Az, and I think it's so funny. We need to move on. Okay, Nesta making friends in the library. She has to work, you know, like her 5 hours a day or whatever in the library, and she finds it to be really calming and kind of, I think just having something to do is just so important for her at this point because she's dealing with very severe PTSD. And she's not really getting any like talk help with it. Like she doesn't have anyone to discuss her feelings with. She really feels like she can't go to Feyre because Nesta does feel guilty that Feyre took care of their family while they were humans and she didn't step up. Like she was so caught up in what she had lost that she could not move her family forward, and so the youngest daughter had to do that. And so I think she feels so guilty for not helping and like not at the time being able to look past herself in that way, that she's almost embarrassed to talk to Feyre about stuff. And then with Elaine, sweet Elaine, I just don't think she would be very helpful trying to work through something so intense. And Elaine's also got, you know, her own stuff going on. That's, I mean, she's definitely scarred by the war too, but she is outwardly at least dealing with it better than Nesta is. It was so helpful for Nesta to meet people who did not know all this past stuff about her. Like people had heard of Nesta, her reputation for being the bad sister or whatever had gotten around, but just having people that she started to feel like friendship with, that she didn't have history with, but she could connect with about all their own pasts, and like all the women in the library having those like scary, tragic pasts happen to them. Like she was able to connect with them over something that was not the same event, but the same feelings. And I think that was really, really important to Nesta as a character to be able to move forward. And she started to feel stronger in her training with Cassian once Cassian finally got her to start training, when she starts to put up that sign-up list to get other girls to come train with Cassian, and it's empty for so long. I was like, oh, just keep trying. And there was that whole, you know, that recurring theme of keep reaching out your hand, where Cassian is told to keep reaching out to Nesta, like she's eventually going to come through, and Nesta, you know, she has to keep reaching out her hand to these other women to try to get them to learn how to fight. She wants them to feel that same strength that she's feeling after feeling weak for so long. Meanwhile, we have an overload of tension between Nesta and Cassian, and they never talk about it. They basically become friends with benefits for so freaking long. It's ridiculous. Can we like not talk about the fact that y'all are like actually like should be dating? I get it, like Nesta wasn't ready to date anyone or whatever, but I was like, can you guys pull it together and discuss your emotions? I mean, I'm sure, the thing is, I feel like Cassian's not great at discussing his emotions either, and Nesta obviously never wants to discuss her emotions, so they just don't talk about that type of stuff, and I was like, how are we ever gonna move forward? I did think it was really funny when her friends like started to notice. They're like, you and Cassian? Oh, the nightmare scene with the silver fire. It was so good. Like, okay, randomly, Nesta's asleep, she bursts into flames, and Rhysand has to handle it. I didn't expect Rhysand to have to handle it. I was waiting for a normal, like, the love interest wakes them up and cuddles them, it's fine, but it wasn't like that. Nesta was like, Cassian couldn't exactly handle it, and he does have to bring her back sometimes. Like that one time when she was trying to use her power and she got lost, and Cassian had to start kissing her to bring her back, which would be kind of cute if the entire inner circle wasn't sitting there watching. These people are way too close. Okay, we get to the part with the Kelpie, and Cassian and Azriel put Nesta in a tree. They're like, Nesta, you stay here, because you're not equipped to handle what's going on, obviously. And of course, what happens? Nesta gets out of the tree, and she goes towards that lake thing, and the Kelpie takes her underwater. He's attacking her, she's about to drown, and she finds the mask under the water. So she puts it on, she raises the dead. It's like, I think it's the Autumn Court soldiers. A bunch of Autumn Court soldiers had gone missing, and now she raises them from the dead to kill the Kelpie. Also, at this point, the cover with the mask made sense, because I was like, are we not past the masks from the Blight in ACOTAR? Like, I thought this was maybe just like an artistic rendition of one of the masks that all the fairies were having to wear, but this makes a lot more sense. So basically, like, Nesta comes out of that lake. The visual was so good. When this turns into a TV series, this is gonna be such a powerful scene. Nesta emerging from the water, dripping wet, just claw marks all over her, with a dead army of Autumn soldiers. Also, kind of as a secondary talent, Nesta now makes magical swords. When she and Cassian go to that blacksmith place and she starts to like pound the sword, she kind of has like this mantra going on. I think it's like never again, but I'm not exactly sure. But it's something about like strength, and she actually makes this sword that has power in it, which is not something a normal fairy can do. Like, she has all this extra power from the cauldron that, yeah, she's like very godlike, like as if raising people from the dead was not enough. The problem is Nesta does not know that she's made magical swords, and the inner circle figures it out before she does, and they take a vote of whether they should tell Nesta that she has this power or not. I agree with those who are like, Nesta should know that, you know, she should maybe be careful while making weapons, things of that nature. Nesta in herself has become a weapon. If she does not know that she is as dangerous as she is, that puts everyone at danger. Everyone at danger. Also, Nesta's making a turnaround. Like, we can trust her at least with that amount of information. And Amren votes against telling Nesta that. I feel like of our group, Amren is definitely the biggest pessimist, obviously. I mean, that's part of her character, and it's part of what makes her funny, in my opinion. But like, when Nesta finds out that Amren decided to vote against her, she gets pissed. She finds Amren and goes off on Amren. Like, she gets so angry. Which I get it, because for a little while, Amren was the only person Nesta trusted, inner circle or otherwise. And now it's kind of like Amren turned against her and chose Feyre, the same way she feels about Elaine. And that's one of the reasons she feels so alone, is like, it was her and Elaine, and then all of a sudden it was Feyre and Elaine, and Nesta's over here by herself. But during this time, because Nesta has found out that Feyre's probably gonna die during childbirth, and first of all, we didn't tell Feyre that she could die giving birth. We're just gonna keep her in the dark about this. So like, I agree with Nesta. Feyre needed to know that information, but I didn't like the way that we relayed said information, because she like basically snaps it back as a sort of revenge. Yeah, she feels really guilty about that, as she should. Like, that was not the way to tell her that. And also, like, I just couldn't believe Rhysand didn't tell her that. It made me feel physically ill to think about the fact that the baby has wings, which, first of all, it was so cute that Cassian and Asriel were like, oh my gosh, like, it's an Illyrian baby. And then we find out that, like, the wings are gonna get stuck in the birth canal and kill Feyre and the baby at the same time. I was unwell. Obviously, I saw a lot of the fan art of Rhysand and Feyre and the baby. So I was like, obviously they have to make it. But then we remember that Rhysand and Feyre have made this pact to die together, which Amren calls them out for. She's like, that is the absolute most stupid thing y'all could have done. Like, what were you thinking? And yeah, I don't even remember them making that pact. And then I was like, what if all those fan arts are like their ghosts, or like just like a cute imagining of like, what if they had made it like happy family together? And I was panicking. Anywho, Rhysand is literally going to kill Nesta. He like calls Cassian, he's like, you have to get Nesta out of here or I am going to murder her for telling Feyre. So Cassian swoops her away to the mountains, where Nesta does not speak for 5 days. And they go hiking, and Nesta's kind of, reverted back to like, doesn't want to take care of herself, doesn't care to live at all. And she passes out, unable to physically continue. And she finally has her emotional breakdown. It took her so long to like fully have a breakdown in front of Cassian so that they could bond. And she tells Cassian that fire popping, like that noise, reminds her of her dad's neck snapping when Hybern killed him. And she says that she feels like she let him die because she has all this power in her. Maybe she could have stopped him if she had tried, if she'd figured it out, like how to use her powers at that point. And overall, it just feels like she hated her dad for so long. Her dad was so absent mentally during their life when they were very poor, and then all of a sudden he comes back and he's saying, he's like, riding those ships, and he's on the Nesta, like the ship, and like finally shows how much he loves her. And Nesta does not return the sentiment. And she feels like it is her fault, and she never, said that she loved her dad and just can't live with herself, basically. And like Cassian sort of gets it. Like, he's a general, like he's in charge of a lot of people who have died, and he feels that responsibility, and like they're able to kind of like bond. He helps Nesta start to work through that it's not her fault, really. It's just, it made Nesta a really relatable character that she couldn't process the fact that it wasn't her fault. She couldn't work through it by herself. And it was nice to see her able to gain some strength from someone else, because she hasn't been able to pull from someone else like that. Also, we never touch on the fact that people can read Nesta's mind, or like that she thinks things and says, and they sound out loud. I don't know what's going on, but there were multiple times during this book where Nesta thinks something, and then it's like almost as if they had heard her, they say this in response. That's almost a direct answer to her question or a continuation of her thought, and it's just weird. Like, if it's a coincidence, I have a hard time believing it's a coincidence, because it just seems like she must be almost like the Damati powers that Rhysand and Feyre have, like almost like she can talk into people's brains and they don't realize it, or she doesn't realize it. I was like, how do you not realize that people are answering your unspoken questions? And I was so confused. Like, is this part of her power? Am I going crazy? Like, also, everyone is afraid of Nesta pointing at them because she did that. She like pointed at the King of Hybern as like a death promise. And now she has these death powers. And so even Amren like kind of like steps out of the way when Nesta points at her. And it's interesting. She also points at Tamlin. I was like, is she gonna kill Tamlin? She didn't kill Tamlin. But now, when we do see Tamlin, he's basically back into beast form. I was like, are we starting over the Beauty and the Beast narrative? Because like technically Feyre and Tamlin their story was very Beauty and the Beast. Obviously, Feyre is not in that relationship anymore. Has Tamlin learned his lesson? Like, was that whole experience, like the before part of Beauty and the Beast, before we even got to the beginning of the real story when he was, you know, arrogant and messed up and like all these weird things, like has he finally learned his lesson and now he's gonna find the belle of his story? Like, are we just starting that narrative over? I don't know if Tamlin's gonna get another love interest. If he does, I have no idea who it's going to be. And it needs to be someone who can keep him in his place because he has some anger issues. We take a little sidebar for everyone to suddenly talk about how Nesta is so good at dancing. And like the fact that Cassian didn't notice her dance training while he was training her to fight just seems like a plot hole. Cause like, I feel like that would be so obvious to someone who has trained so many people for him to be like, hey, you're really good at footwork, and like to use that. That's kind of like a side note, but everyone starts talking about like how Nesta is such a good dancer and was trained, and like so many people had fallen in love with her just because of her dancing, and so they need Eris to be on their side. So they basically get Nesta to almost seduce him while dancing at their party, and it works. I was like, I'm sorry, like at what level dancer are you to get Eris to be like, Rhysand, I will give you anything if you let me marry Nesta? Like, what? Of course, this pisses Cassian off, and he almost destroys the whole thing. I was like, you need to pull it together. Like, I get that he was jealous. I mean, at the time I was like, Cassian, there's no way you can get jealous about this. Like, obviously Nesta's not into him. But then Nesta's like, yeah, I will marry him. And it's because she feels like she's not good enough for Cassian. Breakdown number 2. Nesta feels like she's not good enough for him, not good enough for anyone in the inner circle, which, like, I get. Like, she really went off the deep end there for a while, but she's clawing her way back. And Cassian and Nesta, after this heart-to-heart that they have, basically say they're gonna get married. I think I'm just confused about like the mates thing. Like, if you're a fae and you meet someone and you want to marry them and you're not sure they're your mate, because in this series you have one mate and it's very clear who that person is, are they gonna get married? And then what happens if they weren't mates and they meet someone else? How does this work? The absolute sweetest thing ever. Nesta and the girls have a sleepover and they make friendship bracelets and read their smutty books together. It's precious. Oh, also, this whole time we're finding out about Valkyries, this extinct group of warrior women that Gwyn is helping her person write a book about or whatever. And we find out that part of their training was to be able to slice a ribbon with the sword. Our 3 leading ladies managed to do that. They slice it and they become Valkyries. I just put Cassian is her mate, thank goodness. Yeah, because I was so concerned. I'm confused about when they know. Like, also, it was so much like the way Feyre and Rhysand had it. Like, Rhysand knew, and I know that Cassian, like, he's obviously been a fae a lot longer. Like, he knows those instincts the way that Nesta doesn't, because she's been a fae for like 10 minutes. But he kept saying, like, he kept wanting her to say mate. He kept saying, like, say it. And I was like, it's like that part in Twilight. I put, why are these girls so pissed about being mates with hot bat boys? They were both so angry, like Feyre and Nesta were both so pissed. I was like, is that really something to be angry about? Like, you were already clearly in love with this person. They just didn't tell you that you were mates because they knew you weren't ready to hear it. Like, ugh. The girls, Emery, Gwyn, and Nesta get put into the right. Welcome, welcome. and happy Hunger Games. So like, it's all of these Illyrian warriors in training, and they get put into, I mean, basically the Hunger Games, and they're trying to reach the top of this mountain if they can, but the main goal is to survive. And our three girls are the only girls in the whole thing. And the purpose, Elriel and Cassian had made sure that the girls had gone through the training that you have to pass to get into the rite. They weren't going to make them do the rite, but the girls got kidnapped in the middle of the night and put into the rite. So now they can't leave. Like, there is no way Cassian or anyone else can get them out of this. It's like, you interfere with this thing, like you die, the person you try to save dies, all of it. At this point, I started seeing a lot of similarities between this book and every other young adult book that I loved when I was like 14 specifically. All of our classic YAs. First of all, we're in the Hunger Games. So that covers Hunger Games and like a little bit of Red Rising, because Red Rising has its own Hunger Games. Meanwhile, while this is happening, Cassian is supposed to be saving Eris from the human queen that is now a fae, Rialin. She was one of the evil human queens that had gone together with Hybern because she was like, yeah, you can destroy the human lands if you make me an immortal fae. Problem is, Nesta went in the cauldron right before Rialin, so the cauldron was pissed off that Nesta took some power from it, so when Rialin got dropped in, she came out super old for eternity. And like, her main goal was to be super young for eternity. So now she's like after Nesta, and apparently she's the one who like coordinated putting the girls in the rite. Ugh, the girls fighting their way back to each other was just... Emery and Gwen get to the mountain. Nesta's like, I'm gonna fight them off. Y'all need to get out of here, because if you touch the rock at the top of the thing, then you're done. You're not, you know, gonna die anymore. Gwen is injured, and then Nesta basically like knocks her out and is like, Emery, get the two of you to the rock. I'm gonna fight off these guys that are coming to kill us. And so Nesta slays this fight with this group of guys, and there's that one left, the one that's like Emery's cousin. I don't remember. But I also don't remember how Cassian got there. I think Rialin, she must have slooshed them all in there or something. Cassian and Nesta are there. And just like Divergent, like here's another one of those connections. Just like Divergent, Rialin manages to put Cassian like under her spell, because she has the objects or whatever. And she says to kill. So like, Rialin's trying to make Cassian kill Nesta. This will destroy Cassian. So he turns the knife on himself, something that Thor could not do while he was in that simulation. And he's like about to stab himself. I was like, I cannot deal with this right now. Nesta uses her powers to dissolve Rialin, like Voldemort in Deathly Hallows Part 2. Right when we think everything's fine, we find out that Feyre is in labor. All I'm really able to picture, that body horror birth scene from Twilight. It is absolutely horrifying. The entire inner circle is there watching Feyre like basically gonna die. Also, Rhysand is gonna, like, they're about to watch their High Lord, High Lady, and like this baby they were all super excited about, like die right in front of them. And there's one nurse. Why is there only one nurse? Rhysand has not managed to find out how to save her life. Like, he's been trying to do all this research, but there's just nothing to be done. Nesta shows up and she uses the trove to save Feyre and the baby. And part of this transaction that she makes, because she, you know, is partial god over death. So she makes an agreement with the mother to give back some of the power that she took from the cauldron in order to save Feyre and the baby. So this happens. Somehow, part of this transaction is making Feyre and Nesta's bodies both capable of having Illyrian babies. So if Nesta and Cassian have a child, then Nesta's gonna be fine, which is good. And then if Rhysand and Feyre have any more kids, she's gonna be fine. So Nesta now can have Illyrian children, but she doesn't have her same death powers, which I wanted to see her use them more, because I feel like there's more war coming. We're not done with all of the battles yet. It's clear we're still on such rocky territory. But at this point, she calls Rhysand her brother, and I put, I'm crying, it's 7 a.m. Oh yeah, I was listening to this early in the morning and unable to contain my emotions. I put, I still don't understand Eris. What did you mean by that, past Katelyn? I don't understand what about Eris. Maybe because like Eris doesn't seem like a bad guy, but he definitely seems like a bad guy because like he abandoned Moore while she had that note literally nailed to her stomach. Nesta has some closure about her dad, which is good. I put no more pregnancies, please. Yes, if we could make it through the rest of this series with no more pregnancies. I hate reading about pregnancy. It makes me ill. Even though I am super excited to see the Bat Boys play with this new little mini Bat Boy that they have. It's gonna be so cute. Next note. Let's get Az and Gwen and Elaine and Lucien in the next book. I'm pulling for Lucien. I can't help it. That might have changed. Because I saw online someone was like, oh yeah, the bonus Asriel chapter. I was like, what the actual frick are you talking about? I started searching. I ran through my apartment to grab my book, and I was like, where is this freaking chapter? It wasn't in my book, and apparently it's in some Barnes & Noble special edition. I bought my book from Barnes & Noble. I don't know where this chapter was. I found it online. Thank you to the person who photocopied that chapter. So like, Asriel and Elaine have like a moment, and then he gives Elaine this necklace with a rose on it, and they're about to kiss, and Asriel knows it's wrong because she has a mate, but at that moment I did not care. I was like, oh my gosh, these two have to be together. Raisin is at the top of the stairs when he sees this happening, and he sends the mind message. He's like, my office now, and he's pissed. And he tells Asriel, he's like, Elaine is not yours. She has a mate. You cannot do this. Asriel brings up a great point that I had thought of before, though, because he's like, what are the odds that these 3 sisters came to us and 2 of them end up with my 2 brothers and the 3rd one doesn't end up with me? He's like, how does that happen? How is she Lucien's mate? And I had the same questions, but the thing is, I feel like if Elaine was supposed to end up with Asriel, then Nesta would have changed Elaine's body as well to be able to have Illyrian babies. But she didn't do that, so I feel like Elaine and Lucien are going to be endgame. And I really want to see that. I want to see how that goes, because I do feel like Lucien just made bad choices in his past because he was loyal to Tamlin. I feel like he could be such a good character, and Elaine is just so sweet. Lucien needs that sweet soul in his life, but so does Asriel. Like, what are we doing? And then Asriel like flies away. He's like, I cannot handle being in the same house as Elaine. So he flies away after finding that Elaine had given him the necklace back because he almost kissed her and then was like, this was a mistake because Raisin was pissed at him. So he gives the necklace to Clotho in the library, and it's like, can you give this to Gwen? Don't tell her it's from me. Which, that just felt kind of weird to me, but whatever. I think our next book is going to be Asriel and Gwen, because I feel like we're set up for that. But then our next book also needs to be Lucien and Elaine. And Mor. And I feel like Mor and that Phoenix Fire Princess, I feel like they're going to end up together. That was A Court of Silver Flame. I'd probably give this one like 8 out of 10, 4 out of 5. I don't think I really enjoyed it as much as like Farrah's storyline, but I still really, really liked this. Thank you for watching this ramble. Please like this video if you liked it and click subscribe if you want to talk about more book stuff. My name's Katelyn. Thanks for watching. Bye!